let's wrap up the NFC West with the San Francisco 49ers. Interesting spot for the Niners coming off a 6-11 season, a year after making the Super Bowl. And a couple, now we're 2 years removed from them having one of the deepest rosters in the NFL, right? Rolling 8 deep on the defensive line, superstars up and down the roster. And as we head into the offseason, there's questions. You have some of the players that they've locked up, like Deebo Samuel, expected to be on the trading block here. And then other spots that were big moves for the Niners a couple years ago. Javon Hargrave, Travarius Ward, both of those guys, big signings that helped in the Super Bowl run heading to free agency. Dre Greenlaw, who I've mentioned, as an option for other teams heading to free agency. So starting guard Aaron Banks. There's going to be some turnover here for the Niners. And all while this Brock Purdy thing is looming, he heads into the last year of his deal. And so they have to figure out what to do with one of the best bargains in the NFL right now, Brock Purdy.
So that's the thing, first and foremost. Like, that's the first task up for the 49ers offseason is signing Brock Purdy to whatever this extension looks like, which got an awful lot more confusing and muddy based off the season he just had than it would have been if he continued his trajectory and his level of play from when he'd taken over the job. So what are we giving him? What's the contract? Like, I assume both of us are re-signing Brock Purdy. Like, we're not being like, hey, what we saw last year was scary enough that we're just going to go in a new direction. Sorry, Brock. We're both re-signing him, right? Now the question is, to what kind of APY?
I would do it. I think I would do it. It's funny because I talk a lot about if teams leaned into their own schematic advantages, whatever those are, that they should do that, right? And the schematic advantage here, or the team advantage, is having Kyle Shanahan and his ability to win with multiple quarterbacks. So there is like this part of me that's not that you could just throw anybody in there. Like Trey Lance isn't going to win with Kyle Shanahan, but my man's won with Matt Schaub won a lot with Matt Schaub and elevated Matt Ryan to MVP and Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Like, there's a history here, Give him Dylan Gabriel, or whoever the next guy is. There is this world, right, where you could say, because of Kyle Shanahan, we can live in rookie quarterback world forever and then build all the superstars around them the way they did the last 4 years. There's a world where that's an option. But it's easier said than done. I'm just saying, this is like a discussion that can happen in the building. We have Kyle Shanahan. We can live in this world of rotating quarterbacks and never having to really pay the guy. The alternative to that is, I think Purdy's good. I think he's good and good for Kyle Shanahan. And I think the potential is high, right? When we talk about potential for quarterbacks, we think about Anthony Richardson because he throws fast and runs fast. I think Purdy's potential is still high to run that system, get the ball to playmakers, make plays inside and outside of structure. I think the ceiling is still high for Brock Purdy as a player. And when you pair him with Kyle Shanahan, I'm willing to pay the money. Now, I don't want to pay him 60 and reset the market. I would pay him Tua money. I'd rather pay him Tua money and say, look, you're the Tua for this operation here. You're not generational. And so you're going to have that conversation with Brock's agent, who happens to be a colleague. He might be listening right now, and hopefully he's not mad if we're talking down Brock's value here.
Well, you are. I'm not. I think, see, this is the thing. I think, yeah, look, we can all acknowledge that Kyle Shanahan has a positive impact on the quarterbacks that play for him, but I think there's a massive leap between that and we can just go to the next guy. Like, I think that hugely undersells the contributing part of Brock Purdy to this whole thing. Like, Brock Purdy, I think, has clearly demonstrated that he is not simply a Mr. Irrelevant who happened to stumble into Kyle Shanahan, and now he's got, we're not waiting for the pumpkin or for him to turn back into a pumpkin. I think if he went somewhere else, he would still be good, maybe not as good. But, like, I don't think you can just hope that, oh, wait, we get rid of Brock Purdy, we're bringing Dylan Gabriel, we'll get more or less the same production, and we go again. And we just do that every time a rookie quarterback contract comes due. They found something fortuitously in Brock Purdy, and you then get to add, the Shanahan factor on top of that, and that's why they've been challenging. Now, I also think it's fair to say, because of the Shanahan factor, should Brock Purdy's contract get discounted a little bit? And I think if the world was fair, the answer to that question would be yes. but it isn't. And his agent has no interest in that argument. His agent is like, this is the guy that's doing this, so he deserves the money. So that's where it becomes really interesting, because Dak Prescott's contract is the one that is setting the marketplace, right? And Dak Prescott is another guy who has some of those arguments as well, in terms of, can Dak Prescott be Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson? Not really. Like, he can be really good, and he can be, he can lead a league-leading offense if everything around him is good, in the same way Tua can. But, like, he should be in the second tier of quarterback contracts on merit. But he isn't, because that's the way his deal got done. That's the way Jerry Jones dragged the ass out of the negotiations and boxed himself into a corner. Point being, that set the precedent. So if you're Brock Purdy's agent, you are coming with demands that start with a 6 as an APY, right? The number begins at 60, and we discuss from there. If you're the 49ers, do you draw a line in the sand financially, or are you just stuck having to pay $60 million a year because that's what the precedent is?
I think they're probably paying 60. I would try to make the Tua discussion, right?
Of course.
The stats are similar, and I'm friends with Mike. Yeah, I would try to make that argument. It probably lands at 58 to 60 or whatever it is, but I would probably do it. I think the big issue for the Niners here, Sam, for a team that went through this cycle of unbelievable drafting and then shrewd moves like trading for Trent Williams. They didn't give up a whole lot for Trent Williams to get an all-world left tackle, which is why we were citing for years, and you hit on a George Kittle, right? We were citing for years. They have the best left tackle, tight end, running back with McCaffrey, fullback, one of the top 3 edge, best linebacker. I mean, they have the best of everything. And that's starting to fall apart just a little bit. A lot of those players are still there, but they're getting older, more expensive, whatever it might be. But the Niners are in this spot heading into this year where they have holes. They need a starting linebacker, safety, corner, Javon Hargrave, free agent, defensive tackle. They have a lot of pieces to fill. And I think it's as simple as reversing 3 years and saying, how well have they drafted? And they haven't added a whole lot in the draft since 2021, I would say, 2020. Like, they went through this run of, just looking through it, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw, Mike McGlinchey, Fred Warner, DJ Reed. Like, they all came to the team within 2 years, right? And this is why we talk a lot about, just because your team has drafted well the last 2 or 3 years doesn't mean they will the next 2 or 3 years. The last few years have netted how many starters for this team, or even potential starters? Maybe D. Winters at linebacker is going to start this year next to Fred Warner. Is that it? That's about it. Dominic Pooney, good pick last year. Renardo Green, probably. It was a rough few years where I think that's where we're sitting here with the Niners in a spot where they have a lot to backfill here. Yeah,
I mean, we've said that for a while, right? Like, they're a weird mix of, they have had some extremely good draft picks, and so Brock Purdy, right? They made one of the worst moves personnel-wise in draft history in trading the farm to go up and get Trey Lance, because they thought that was what was going to turbocharge this Shanahan offense and, add a whole layer of, like, RG3 rookie season plus, inflated, adjusted for inflation, et cetera, completely whiff on that. Trey Lance looks like a disaster and has never gotten better, like, no matter where he's gone or what he's done. Completely rescued by the fact that they stumble ass backwards into Brock Purdy with literally the last pick in the draft. So, they've been rescued by a couple of, like, super high value draft picks. But then you have drafts like 2023 where, okay, they didn't pick before the third round, but they then had like 3 consecutive picks at the end of the third round, plus, whatever it was, 5, 6 more in that draft, which have produced nothing, like nothing. And not only nothing, but like the 3 third-round picks. Okay, the third round is not like, you're not expecting to get superstars out of the third round, but you can get useful contributing players fairly regularly from the third, right? Kobe Turner, right, was a third-round draft pick. Like, there's a lot of high-impact third-round players. They drafted a safety that confused people, who's not been good, a kicker who's been atrocious and is only still in the job because they spent a third-round draft pick on him, and a backup tight end who was a backup tight end, like, in college. This was not somebody that, was an elite tight end who's become a backup. Like those were 3 head-scratching picks at the time, which have been proven to have been head-scratching after the fact. So drafts like that are killing them. Like this is a team that spent whatever that was, 10 draft picks and got nothing for it.
Yeah,
They can't
and
do
I want
that.
to be and I want to be clear. Like the last draft, 24, was pretty good, but it's the previous ones. Like when we're talking about guys that should be getting into years 3, 4, and 5 of their career and in their prime, that's not setting the organization back necessarily, but that's why they're sitting here with holes to fill. So I think they've
Yeah.
got more work to do. Right, a couple of years ago, they were in a great spot because that's when Deebo and Bosa and all those guys were in their prime, not getting paid a ton. So now they're figuring out, how do I pay all these guys, hope that they don't drop off. They just have to hit on, like, it's an important draft, man. They got to hit on another draft. And so I think that's just where they are. And that's where they're going to be for the next couple of years. They're drafting high though. They're at pick 11 here, right? And they might be in the tackle market to future proof for Trent Williams. They have a lot of picks. I think this is, for all the teams in the NFL, one of the most important drafts because of the volume of draft picks that San Francisco has and the idea and all of these stars needing to get paid. So where are we going to go with some of these options here?
Yeah, I think they're another team where defensive line makes a ton of sense in that first round. I mean, I forget who it was. Whoever's mock draft, was it Phil Yates's mock draft we were looking through, who had like basically a third of the first round was defensive linemen, right? So you're going to, like, basically every team that's picking, like, this is a good value spot for the defensive line. It's because basically everywhere in the first round is good value for the defensive line. You've got genuinely elite defensive line talents like, Mason Graham, who's a top 5 caliber draft pick, all the way down to the guys that make sense, at the bottom of the first round and into the second round and all the way through the first round. So whether you're picking 11, 18, 26, like all these places are good value spots for the defensive line. The 49ers, I think it's true. Their issue is outside of Nick Bosa, who was basically a slam dunk, can't miss, home run type of draft pick. They have drafted badly on the defensive line for a long time now. Like they've swung at it a few times and have missed almost invariably, whether it's edge rushers like Drake Jackson, whether it's interior players like Javon Greenlaw. This is one they can't screw up. Like they need this guy. If they draft a defensive lineman at 11, this needs to hit.
The Kinlaw one does hurt. You're right. They have missed a lot, but I think we're not saying that means they won't hit the next time. It just means they're in the spot where right now it's Nick Bosa and not a whole lot of depth because they've missed on some of those picks. I would love to see that spot for James Pierce. Walter Nolan's being mentioned in the chat. I'm good with any of those types of players.
Mike Green.
Michael Williams. Mike Green. I was going to say Mike Green opposite Nick Bosa would be outstanding. So let's go that way in the first round. Best defensive lineman available here for the Niners. I would love to see them bring Dre Greenlaw back. I don't know if they go that route with D Winters there. I think he showed some good stuff last year next to Fred Warner. They're another team. I think the corner depth in this draft, I think there'll be some options in rounds 2 and 3 where they need somebody to come in and compete opposite Renardo Green, who did a nice job as a rookie. Left guard Aaron Banks is a free agent. So they've got a few holes to fill on both sides of the ball here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a team all of a sudden that needs some work, and they're about to be squeezed because of this Brock Purdy contract that they're probably going to have to give him.
They have cap space
for the moment.
Sign Purdy, right? That's going to take up a chunk. You're going to move money around. Last thing, trade Deebo Samuel.
I think they're going to end up cutting him. I don't know that anyone's going to want to make that trade.
Is his value just so much higher for the Niners versus other teams? Not because he plays running back sometimes, but just because they have other pieces and they fit him in well, screen game and just getting him the ball in space.
Yeah, and it's like he's on that healthy contract. He's getting up there in age now. He's got some serious wear on the clock, given the role that he's had, given his injury history, etc. I feel like they're going to end up cutting him rather than trading him. I think if they do it with a post June 1st designation, it saves them. There's $10 million of dead space, but it actually saves them some money against the cap. Whereas if they do it pre June 1st, it's a hit.
It just spreads it out. It's $31 million overall dead. I think they keep Deebo.
But it frees up $5 million of space this year, and there'll be freed up space next year as well. In a world where again that becomes more important with Brock Purdy signing a contract.
Man, I think they got to keep him.
But he wants out. They've already, like, I don't think keeping him is an option. Like, I think your two options are trade or cut.
The problem with players demanding trades, man, it really hamstrings the team because over $30 million dead cap, no matter what, whether you spread it out over multiple years or if it's just in one swoop, it's not really a great option for either.
But I think the 49ers are stuck now with three options, which is find somebody that wants to trade for him, and I don't know if there's one of those teams out there, or are we pre or post June 1st cut, which, as you said, that's just a decision of, do we eat all the dead cap space this year or do we spread it out over 2 years?
Yeah.
To me, the most likely of those three is you cut him with a post June 1st designation, you spread the paying out over 2 years, you get some cap savings right now, and that's the best of a bad option.
I guess I'd have to trade him. The dead cap still gets you with the trade too, but
yeah,
I would think trade.
And you have to find someone that wants to take on that contract.
All right, did we fix the Niners or just lay out all their problems?
More
double up on defensive line with all those picks. I mean, hit on those draft picks. Defensive linemen, I'd say corner depth, and those are the ways you're going.
Is there anyone of their free agents that you would, I mean, you said you try potentially to bring back Greenlaw, but they have a guy waiting. Like, would you, Charvarius Ward as a good quality starting corner who's presumably going to be hitting reasonably high-end money in free agency? Like, is there anyone else you would try and bring back?
I would see what the market is for Aaron Banks, just because he's the known commodity there at guard. I think they could handle, moving on there. I would look at Javarius Ward though. I like him a lot as a player. I think they have the ability to play press man with him and Renardo Green as a 1-2 punch. I think there's a lot of options there, but it might not. I mean, there's some corner depth. I think where they're drafting that they could also replace him. But Ward, I think, is most intriguing, other than Dre Greenlaw,
right?
Who I think they let go. All right. Good job on the 49ers here.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.